What if Abraham Lincoln was assassinated? Now, you may think to yourself, or be thinking to yourself right now, well, wasn't Abraham Lincoln already assassinated? Well, yes. But what if he was assassinated before the Civil War started? Well, that almost happened. In real life, there was a little thing called the Baltimore plot. This took place right before Lincoln's inauguration as president, in which Confederate sympathizers wanted to assassinate him in Baltimore, Maryland, while he was on the train to D.C. to become president. Now, of course, in real life, what happened was Lincoln survived. Future Secretary of State William Seward, who would go on later to buy Alaska, warned President Lincoln, or soon to be President Lincoln, about the plot, and Lincoln disguised himself and thus survived, became president, and the rest is history. But what if Seward didn't warn him? What if Lincoln did not disguise himself, he didn't take it as a serious threat, and he died? Well, in our scenario, that's exactly what happens. Lincoln is not warned about the assassination, or if he is, he doesn't take it seriously. A Confederate sympathizer, this guy right here, goes on to the train that Lincoln is on in Baltimore, gets a musket or a gun similar to this, cocks back the hammer, shoots him in the face, kills him right on the spot. Now, what happens next is not so cut and dry. Because Lincoln wasn't president yet, he wouldn't be president for another 13 days. His vice president at the time, Hannibal Hamlin, would not automatically become the next president. More likely, either William Seward or Salmon P. Chase would become president afterward. There would be most likely another election, and those two are very powerful political individuals. William Seward would be, in our timeline, would become the Secretary of State, and Salmon P. Chase would become the Secretary of the Treasury. Either way, though, if they became president, something would come into place that was proposed by the Republican Party during Lincoln's presidency that Lincoln vetoed, he blocked, called the Crittenden Compromise, which would solidify slavery in the United States. So, no 13th Amendment. Slavery would continue. A civil war would most likely still break out, because that is pretty much inevitable, really. But it would most likely be much later. The Republican Party, besides Lincoln, really wanted to avoid a civil war. So, in the scenario in which there's a civil war later on, it would most likely be probably in the late 1800s. So, 1880s, 1890s-ish. Grant wouldn't become president because there's no civil war for him to fight in. And yeah, it would be much more devastating, especially in the scenario in which there isn't a civil war, and slavery, like I said, is still cemented into the United States. Well, that just isn't a sustainable practice. It would most likely go away just much more gradually than the 13th Amendment did, in which slaves were freed in rebelling territories just with his signature. So in that timeline, there really wouldn't be a civil rights movement. It would be a gradual emancipation of the slaves, but there wouldn't be a guarantee of citizenship by birth as we have now.